Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing stages your dumper goes through. I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details. www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing stages your dumper goes through. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will be wondering what likely stages your dumper will go through. In today's podcast, I will be discussing the 5 stages that the majority of dumpers will experience. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is love. Now we need to start at the beginning. I always say that if we want to try to find a way through the door of the future, the key can be found in the past, and that is why we must start at the beginning to really understand the dumper stages that your ex has likely gone through already and will likely eventually go through if they haven't yet reached these milestones. So we're starting at the beginning and we are feeling love. Your ex is feeling love for you. You are feeling love for your now ex. And this is when you were in a loving relationship. Now at this time, you would have probably found it impossible to consider you two being apart. And the thing is, your ex would have likely felt the same. It's very easy as a dumpee to think, well, my relationship meant nothing to them. It wasn't real. They never really cared. They never really loved me. But I'm here to say that most dumpers would have loved you. Most dumpers probably still love you. Most dumpers did not want this to happen, and they're probably just as shocked as you that it ever did. So when we consider point number 1, the first stage that a dumper goes through is love. The first stage is them feeling love for you within this relationship, and at this time, they never saw another outcome. They never saw themselves with anybody else. They never saw themselves even considering a relationship with somebody new, and they certainly didn't think you'd be dating somebody else either. In fact, if you had said to them, can you imagine me dating somebody new, they would have probably been horrified. And they'd have probably said something along the lines of, you are the only one for me. You're the only person I ever want. I'm so in love with you. I want to be together forever. This is very, very likely. Now, even if you think, well, my ex wasn't somebody who really showcased their emotions, if you were in a romantic relationship, they would have been in love with you, okay? If you consider the beginning of your relationship, if this is a romantic relationship, the vast, vast, vast majority of people within those relationships are very much in love. And that is no different to your now ex, to your now dumper. You might be thinking, well, they ended the relationship, they did it in a way where they didn't even seem to care. But what I'm saying is at the beginning of the journey, when you first got together, when you was in this relationship, they were feeling love. And the first dumper stage is they were in love with you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast, about stages your dumper goes through. And point number 2 is loss of romantic emotional attraction. Now this is the moment or moments where your ex started to feel a decline in attraction for you. I refer to this as romantic emotional attraction. This is the type of attraction that is felt between people in romantic relationships. It's that kind of love. Now, a loss of romantic emotional attraction will happen for one of 2 main reasons. It is either via an action of their partner or growth within themselves. So let's break this down a little bit. When I say an action of a partner, this could be to varying different degrees. Now, one clear example that you might already have thought of yourself is if you were to have cheated on your now ex. If you cheated on your partner and they found out about this, or whatever happened from that point, if this got to the stage where they had to consider the fact that you have been unfaithful, they could easily and understandably lose romantic emotional attraction for you. This would be due to your action, and therefore you might be able to see and understand how this could have been possible. But there are other actions. You could have, for instance, decided that you were no longer going to be putting in the effort that you once did within your relationship. So this inaction is in essence an action. It's a negative action, the action of no longer dating your partner properly. I always say that you should try to keep the spark alive by dating your partner the same after 6 years, as you did after 6 months, as you did after 6 weeks. If you stop dating your partner, if you stop making the effort, this type of complacency is an action which can cause a loss of romantic emotional attraction in your partner's mind, and this could be why they end the relationship. But there are other things as well to consider. There's many more actions, but I will probably speak of another podcast. But let's look at that other section that I just momentarily discussed, and this was about growth in themselves. So another reason why somebody can lose romantic emotional attraction for their partner is growth in themselves. So let's say, for instance, that you and your partner, you're going along nicely, everything seems fine, and they decide that they want to better themselves. They decide they want to go into further education. They decide they want to move their life in a different direction. Well, perhaps they go through this extra education. Perhaps they get a new job. Perhaps they're mixing in new circles. Perhaps they start feeling that they have outgrown you. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to do identical things to your partner, but if you don't keep a level playing field, if you don't keep the scales of value similar, this can unfortunately also cause a romantic emotional attraction loss. Like I said, things don't have to be identical. If you're in a relationship and your partner says they want to better themselves, you certainly shouldn't be trying to hold them back because you're worried they might outgrow you. Instead, you want to be encouraging them and look at ways that you can grow yourself. If you have the same skill set and knowledge at the age of 40 that you did at the age of 20, that would suggest you haven't grown, you haven't been pushing forward, you haven't been improving. So this is what I'm talking about. You know, if your partner wants to improve themselves, then good for them. This is what you should be doing. You should also be wanting to do this, but it doesn't have to be in the exact same way. If your partner wants to go in an educational way, maybe you want to go in a way which is more creative, for instance. But you need to be growing, improving, and becoming a version 2.0 of yourself within the relationship, ideally, rather than post-breakup, which is what I have to try to support people with a lot of the time. If you can keep growing, then the likelihood of your partner losing romantic emotional attraction because of growth is minimal. You know, if you grow and they grow, then there is not going to be the loss of attraction, which can unfortunately sometimes cause what I'm going to be speaking about in point number 3. And point number 3 of today's podcast, we'll be speaking about stages your dumper goes through. Point number 3 is ending the relationship. So as I've said, losing romantic emotional attraction, it causes one end goal, and that is the end of a relationship. Now, when we look back at point number 1, the love, they would never have considered it was possible. But they were seeing you through different eyes at that point. For whatever reason or reasons, your partner has now lost enough romantic emotional attraction to drop at the necessary low point for them to decide to action the breakup. This is not something they likely planned or wanted. They probably would have been thinking about this for a long time before they took the decision. Contrary to what most dumpees think, the vast majority of dumpers do not want to hurt their partner. They don't get any excitement, happiness, or thrill from doing so. They do not want to cause pain, and it is likely something very awkward and sad for them as they move through this particular stage. A dumpee will often feel blindsided. Most dumpees do not see this coming. But when they look at things in hindsight, they can often see how the romantic emotional attraction was lost, and therefore it is not often as big a surprise as it seemed at the time. But during the breakup itself, the dumpee needs to be keeping as stable-minded as possible. This doesn't mean you can't fight your corner during the time of the breakup. Of course, you're going to be trying to keep the relationship going. But when the dust has settled, you truly need to be keeping a stable mind and accepting the breakup. Now, if you feel that you need support, advice, or strategy due to any of the stages we talk about today, or maybe a situation that I don't even cover, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service. I can speak with you one-on-one about your unique circumstances, and they will likely differ to the generalized content that I have to put out on my podcasts. Whether you want to try to get your ex back, whether you want to try to find somebody even better, whether you're going through breakup recovery or you want to start dating again, I can help you and support you through your journey to try to find the best possible outcome. I can't guarantee you'll get your ex back, but what I can say is that if you follow my advice, hints, tips, and use my support as rocket fuel to push you forward, if you don't get your ex back, then you'll put yourself in a fantastic position to find somebody even better. It really is win-win. Do the right thing for you, and if you feel I can help you, go to my website, www.dateme.tips, check out my audio coaching service information, and start your journey with me today. So now let's get into point number 4, and the fourth point of today's podcast, about stages your dumper goes through. And point number 4 is the single honeymoon period. So when somebody ends a relationship, they're going to be going on their own path. They've decided that the relationship was not fulfilling for them. They decided that to live the life they wanted to live, they couldn't continue within this relationship at this time. And it's important to say at this time because we live in the moment. This is how they're feeling right now. It's not how they were feeling during point number 1 when they were in love. And it might not be how they're feeling months into the future. But right now, they want to be going on their own path. And they are on the single honeymoon period. And this is a time where a dumper will live the life that they felt they couldn't live within the relationship. Maybe they're doing hobbies, interests, and things that they couldn't do because either you didn't like them doing it or they didn't have the time. Maybe they're going to parties and clubs. Maybe the reality is they want to try dating other people. These are the truths we have to understand. But the good news is for somebody who wants to get their ex back, you must realise that the likelihood of them finding a long-term compatible person so soon after your breakup is nearly impossible. So even if you find out your ex is dating somebody else, try not to worry or panic. The likelihood is it will be a rebound relationship and it will only last a matter of months at most. Again, nothing can be guaranteed, but it's very hard to find a long-term compatible partner. And would they really find one at the first time of asking as soon as your breakup took place? I very much doubt it. So the single honeymoon period lasts different lengths of time for different people, but generally speaking, it's at least 6 months, normally between 6 months and a year. As they go through this, you may see things on social media where it seems like they're living their best life. You might hear things that surprise you. Your ex doing things that you never thought they ever would, things that you thought they didn't even like. They are trying new things, they are living their life in a different way, and it can be quite scary to hear about. So I would always suggest, don't check your ex's social media. It will never, ever help you. So now let's get into point number 5 and the final point of today's podcast, about stages your dumper goes through. And point number 5 is reflection. Now, reflection is something that everybody has to go through. You can run, but you can't hide. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and acknowledge the situation that your life has presented. And your dumper will have to do this, and they do it after the single honeymoon period. When everything that was once new now seems old, when everything that seemed exciting becomes mundane, this is when your ex, the dumper, will reflect on their life over the past few months and or years. And this is when they will really be considering, did I make the right decision in ending my relationship? Now, if they have regrown enough romantic emotional attraction at this time for you in their mind, this is when they will likely reach out to you and you stand every chance of reconnecting. If unfortunately they have not grown enough romantic emotional attraction at this time, they will not reach out to you and they will feel that that was indeed the right decision that they made. Now, please don't be scared. This doesn't mean that if at the initial reflection, if they don't reach out to you, then that is your chance over, because there will be further reflections throughout the dumper's life. The likelihood of you getting your ex back does somewhat decline after a year apart, but I've heard people reconnect many years later. It is possible, albeit less likely. So how can you grow romantic emotional attraction in your ex's mind when you're not even with them? How, at the point of reflection, can you have raised that bar? Well, this is where you need to be using the hints, tips, and advice that I've got in all of my other podcasts. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring that bell for notifications. I would always suggest that you start off by using my version of a no contact rule, which somewhat differs to other versions that you can find online. And I suggest that you kick off your journey throughout my channel by listening all the way through to my no contact rule playlist on my YouTube channel. That will really put you in a great position to start trying to not only heal, but also increase the chance of growing romantic emotional attraction in your ex's mind. As I said earlier, if you want to speak to me one-on-one about your unique instances, your unique situation, and how I can help you increase the chance of you getting your ex back or finding somebody even better, then go to my website, www.dateme.tips, and find out what you need to do from that point to speak with me one-on-one. Always remember that with or without your ex, you will have a positive future. They don't define you. Your happiness is not connected to them. Your happiness is connected to you. And happiness can be around your next corner. We just don't know when that next corner is. So you've got to keep moving forward and you will eventually get there. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.